guys, it's Danny. Today I have a little bit of a maintenance project to do, and I thought I could take you along and make a little video on this orchid, which is an Oncidium type. You guys don't know it because I didn't actually film it when I purchased it. I wrote here that it's a Brassata, no ID. It's actually more of a Miltassia looking like type of orchid, and I purchased it at a discount. It didn't actually have fresh flowers on it, it just had some fading ones. But I was able to tell it was something I didn't have in my collection. However though, there is a little bit of a problem with this orchid because the growth pattern doesn't really fit with the pot that I chose to pot it in a few months ago. So I need to address this because right now the new growths, which are just exploding with roots, have some issues putting those roots in the actual medium. And while this is an epiphytic orchid and it's absolutely fine for the roots to be in the air, it's not absolutely fine for me to have to water it so often because this orchid has pretty much no roots inside the medium. So what I have to do constantly is make sure that these roots, which are hanging in the air, get hydration. How do I do that? Do I spray the orchid every day? That's out of the question. So I decided the best thing to do right now is to go back and repot this orchid, talk a little bit about the process. So I hope you'll enjoy this maintenance project, and if you do end up liking it, don't forget to give this video a like. A share would be wonderful, and why not subscribe? I post 3 times a week. So with that said, let's go to the repotting table and see what we're working with. Alright, so whenever we face one of these inconveniences, let's call it like that, the most important thing at the beginning is know exactly what we want to correct. How we're gonna do that is not really all that important now because we might start making a plan, but then we unpot the orchid and we notice that we cannot really do what we wanted to do. So we're gonna be in a pickle. Best thing to do is to go at it with a blank mind, as it were. The purpose of what I'm about to do, which I don't know what I'm about to do to be fully honest, is making sure that the new growth roots are not just hanging out of the pot. I want the majority of the roots to be inside the pot, inside the medium. Now let's take a look inside the potting medium and assess the situation that we have at hand. As I was saying, inside the potting medium, we will not have an abundance of very good roots. Actually, I'm willing to bet that all of these roots are dead because I remember what I did when I repotted this orchid. I left on it quite a few roots in the hopes that at least a few of them will be alive to hydrate the orchid. My orchid is super dehydrated, and it was dehydrated when I purchased it as well. So I purposely left on quite a few roots in the hopes that one of them at least is alive to help my orchid. Well, I don't know if anything is alive anymore, but I know that I do have new growth, and this new growth is ready to produce a really nice brand new root system. Wouldn't it be a pity if these roots just start to dry all of a sudden? It would. So next step is to confirm my suspicion. We need to unpot the orchid and see if those roots are alive. And here's one thing that I actually forgot. This orchid was actually 2 orchids, and I just potted them together, and this actually makes my situation a little easier, and you'll see why. So I will start to remove this medium from the roots just so I can have a better look-see. And honestly, these roots, they really don't look so healthy, and I do believe that I don't need them because I have brand new roots starting to grow. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is remove all of this medium. I'm not actually going to throw away the medium because it's not old. It's actually pretty fresh, maybe a few months old, and in this time it didn't actually have time to break down. So I'm not going to throw it away, I'm actually going to reuse it. Most of them will be in the back, by the way, in the old part of the orchid, and I can just go ahead and do this. In this case, I'm a little lucky because I can clearly see the difference between the live new roots and the old roots, which, yeah, they're not alive anymore. And here we are. So far we took the steps that came natural. We unpotted the orchid, we assessed the situation of the roots, we removed all of the roots which were not alive anymore. We needed to do that anyway. Might as well do it now at the beginning before we take a decision on what we're gonna do, because simply by handling the orchid, our mind will settle on one of the options that we have. So at this point, it is time to make a decision. And here comes the part where it's really up to personal choice. which is something I'm not sure many people talk about, but in orchid growing, there is personal choice, there is personal preference. It's not just rules. If you only go by the rules, you're gonna get tired of this orchid hobby at some point. So we have some options, we have some decisions to take. What do we want to do with this orchid right now? Well, one thing we could do is keep only one of these divisions, because there are enough growths to make sure that we will have a nice bloom show, and the orchid is not tiny. We are going to fill that pot no matter if we keep both of the divisions or only one. So if we so desire to, let's say, divide the orchid and share it with a friend, we can absolutely do so. We don't need both of the divisions. At the same time, it is absolutely fine to want both of the divisions. And to do so, we could actually opt for a bigger pot. We might have in our little orchid stash a pot which is rather wide than tall. That would be ideal for both of these divisions as they are right now, without any type of customization, let's put it like that. This pot, it's a little narrow for both of these divisions, and the growth pattern of the orchid, if you noticed, this orchid tends to produce a little bit of a longer rhizome. It's a little bit of a climber, not the easiest thing to work with. So this pot, a little tiny, a little narrow, not the best solution. At the same time, if we do want to use this pot, we can opt for removing some of these pseudobulbs, because these divisions have some very, very old pseudobulbs, which were very important until now because they gave their energy to the new growth. But see, the new growth is already formed now, and it's already sending out a ton of roots. The energy from the older bulbs is not all that needed anymore. This orchid can absolutely do with only a few bulbs and the brand new root system that is growing, provided this root system gets enough hydration, you stay on top of watering, and you provide a good environment for it to develop. So these are the possibilities that I'm willing to take at this point. There might be others, of course. You can absolutely do what you consider best for you at this point. Right now, there is no right and wrong. It's only, what do you want to do? Do you want to do this or the other? So since this is my orchid and my decision, what I will attempt to do is make it a little tinier. I want to remove some of these pseudobulbs, which they don't do anything for me anymore. At this point, this pseudobulb will not create any new growth because all of the eyes most probably are occupied. Also, it's a very old pseudobulb. The older a pseudobulb gets, the lesser chances it has to produce a new growth if we don't trigger it in a way, if we don't separate it from the rest of the plant. But if we do so, it's a back bulb. Probably it's not going to survive. Also, it will be a little bit uglier than everybody else. The older a pseudobulb is, the less it will rehydrate pretty much. So no matter how I spin it, this old pseudobulb is not really all that needed anymore, and it's also not going to look good. What it will do is take up space in the pot that I will choose to use, which might be this one or a different one. So I personally don't want it. You might decide to keep it, and that is just as fine and as correct as what I'm going to do. So now I think I need a little bit more space to think. All right, so let's start with the smaller division because it's easier, and there's no shame in starting with the easiest thing. So what we see here is that this pseudobulb actually has two other connected directions to it. So if we want to eliminate the pseudobulb, we need to pretty much divide the orchid, which is fine by me because there are quite a lot of pseudobulbs and the new root system is on its way. With this particular orchid, even if I divide it, the setback will be pretty much the same. It was a pretty sick orchid. I don't expect it to be in full tip-top condition anytime soon, so the fact that I'm splitting it, it's not going to take so much of a toll. So in my opinion, it's worth it. So with this division, the first thing that I will do is cut the rhizome right here. Okay, now at this point, we have another decision to take. Do we keep this little segment here? Do we pot it together with the mother plant, or do we give it to a friend? Because this is a perfectly viable division. In case you want to give this to a friend, I suggest you let this pseudobulb be, because it will feed this growth and your friend will have blooms a little bit faster, maybe 6 months faster. If you intend to keep this division and pot it up with the same plant, I suggest you do remove the pseudobulb, even if this growth will take just a little bit longer to mature. You won't even notice it because it's going to be together with the other part of the orchid, which is going to bloom. And the benefits of removing this part of the orchid is that you will be able to fit your orchid better in the pot and it will stay in that pot for longer. which long term, it's actually a really, really good thing. So I decided that I want to remove this pseudobulb. All right, so what do we do with this division? Well, there is something we can actually do. If it doesn't really fit in the pot, we can actually split it into two once again, and it will still not be all that set back because roots are right here. However, I'm not going to split it again. I'm gonna let it be because if you look at this division from this angle, can we see how slim it is? I don't think it's gonna take all that much space in the pot if I can go a little bit smart with it. We'll see. Alrighty, the big division. What do I want to do here? Well, again, we can see that there is a central pseudobulb, which is very, very old. I personally don't want to keep it. So in order to remove it, I need to divide the orchid. What will this imply? It will imply having this division, which, oopsie, it only has one pseudobulb and a new growth. And according to division rules, that's not a good idea. Rules don't apply when you have a brand new root system, which is so luscious right now. So yes, the orchid will still go through the setback no matter if I divide it or not. I have the root system on the way. It's already absorbing water on the lower levels. I'm not all that concerned that all I will have here is one pseudobulb and a growth. And that's one of the exceptions of the division rules, which you probably will not encounter all the time. And if you do intend to share an orchid with a friend, don't risk it. Give your friend the best possible division you can. But since this is my orchid and I have multiple divisions of it, I am not all that worried. So let's go ahead and divide this orchid. I don't even think we're gonna need the pruners. Maybe we do. All right. So here we have the tiny division. At this point, you can actually keep this division as it is, no problem. But do we see how much this pseudobulb climbed? If I'm gonna pot this orchid together with everybody else, I'm gonna have to bury this pseudobulb in order for the root system to reach the medium, which I don't wanna do. So I will go ahead and remove this pseudobulb as well. And finally, our last division. Again, there are a few things to consider and decide upon here. Do we see that this is a central pseudobulb which has two directions of growth, but only one decided to develop? It makes sense. This orchid was dehydrated. It didn't have enough energy to put on all that much growth. So this side of the orchid has taken a little break. Can it wake up in the future? Oh yes, this is not an old part of the orchid. It's highly likely that this section will start to come back once this pseudobulb matures, and I've had it happen multiple times. However though, if this doesn't start to develop after this guy matures, and this guy produces another growth, and that one matures, and this one still didn't do anything, then chances of this one waking up decrease exponentially. So what I decide to do is to leave this growth on. I'm gonna try to arrange it in a way that it doesn't really bother me, taking into account that it might never wake up. And if in, let's say, 1 year from now, I assess the situation and I decide that this one will never wake up, I can go ahead and cut it and create more space in my pot. So that's at least the plan, seeing what I have to work with here, but of course, things can always change because we're always winging it. We're always adapting to the situation. So now that I have all my decision all made up, let's try to pot the orchid and see if we're gonna stick to the plan or we're gonna have to improve it as we go. So because I'm not going to throw away the medium and I actually do wanna reuse the pot, I'm gonna let the bottom of the medium just sit here because it's perfectly fine and it's arranged the way I like it. Let's see how we are going to plant the orchid. Oh, that's so beautiful, Joey. Okay. Oh. Are we done here? No? Wonderful concert, but we need to get to... Okay, girls, let's calm down now. So, my aim is to keep the oldest parts of the orchid in the center and put the newest parts to grow towards the edges of the pot. So my orchid should look something like this, but I need to put a little bit more medium because the level is too low. And in these types of moments when you realize you don't actually have 3 or 4 hands, here's a trick to help you out. So what we need to do is get ourselves some stakes. I'm using some bamboo skewers and I'm just going to stake temporarily. We'll see if it's going to be permanent, each and every one of these divisions, just so they stay in place while you arrange medium around them. There we go. Doesn't need to look very professional just yet. All right, so ideally, things should look something like this. So let's go ahead and put some medium around this orchid to further stabilize it, and we're just gonna arrange it as we go. Okay, see, the plan needs adjusting. We actually have a saying in our language, the plan at home is not the same as the plan at the market. Meaning, this guy needs to go. It's just pushing on this division, which is already creating a nice growth, and it's just sticking here in the middle, taking up space. And even though, yes, it might decide to wake up one day, it just doesn't go in this configuration. I'm not okay with it. There's something about it that will not let me sleep properly. So what I will do is remove it. I don't need to unpot the orchid because the rhizome is right here. There we go. Oh, look at that. Looks so much better. And I can actually move this further back. I could also move this a little further back as well, giving it a little bit more space here. Only good things are happening after this decision. Okay, so I'm gonna continue to arrange the medium and just play a little bit with my orchid, making sure that everything is as pushed back as it can be. Look at this. Oh, look at this. Now I can totally push this back. This growth has even more space. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and play around with it until I reach a nice arrangement. And there we go, my orchid is all done. I decided to leave on 2 of the stakes. They anchored the orchid for now, so I will not have issues with the orchid just starting to flop over. One thing that happens sometimes, when the roots grow, they actually push the orchid if the orchid is not anchored. So you might pot your orchid straight, but as the roots grow, it will start to lean over because, well, this medium has some solid pieces of stuff in it, like bark. Inevitably, the roots will push against the bark. If there's no opposition, they will just push the orchid. If there is opposition, the roots are forced to find their way in. So that's why we need to use the stakes. As the orchid establishes, the stakes will not be necessary because it will already have roots to anchor it against new roots which might start to push on it. So as we can see, my goal was achieved. All of the roots of these new growths are going to grow inside the medium, which is what I wanted. This orchid needs hydration. It needs the best chances that I can give it for it to flourish. And if you know a thing or two about me, you know that sometimes I kind of overestimate what I can do. I can be like, oh sure, I have time to spray these roots every single day. Yeah, Maya knows me best. Of course I don't have the time, I just think I have the time, and I think some of you can relate. So knowing this about me, I'm starting to make a conscious effort to not give me other tasks to do more than what I already have. And this is what I did here. So really in the end, orchid growing is not only about respecting rules for the orchid to thrive. The orchid will thrive regardless of the rules if you're just a little bit careful. You also need to take into account what you want. If it doesn't put your end goal at risk, everything is okay, everything goes. And if anybody tells you, well, you could have done things differently, you can reply, yes, I could have, but I didn't wanna. Why wouldn't you? Because I just didn't. And that's a good enough reason. So you have to think about yourself with orchids in order to enjoy this hobby, not transform it into a very hassling task that you need to do because you just need to. No, you can skip the having to do stuff if you just follow your heart a little. Alrighty, it's time to end here. I hope you guys found this video useful. I hope it inspired you. And yes, all situations will be just a little bit different, but I'm hoping that sort of showing you all of these situations that I go through, you might find yourselves in a mixture of situations, and maybe what I did could give you a little bit of an idea of what you could do. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!